Welcome back. We're talking a little bit next about local immigration and how immigrants might find their way around the community and sort of get their life started. So with me on the couch, I have Susan Laycock as well as Sandra Lee. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for inviting us.
First off, Susan, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell me a little bit about local immigration partnerships?
Well, local immigration partnership, actually Sandra is the expert on that topic, but I will tell you that as a workforce development board, we're really recognizing the importance of better engaging newcomers to our communities, especially in the employment sector.
Okay.
So we've been partnering with Rogers, or this is actually the very beginning of the partnership, where we're going to be coming on and talking to our community and employers about the need and the increasing need for employees within our communities, and the immigration partnership is part of that solution.
Got it. Hence, Sandra Lee.
Hi. The Local Immigration Partnership in Simcoe County was established in 2011, so we've been working for 5 years with community stakeholders. We have about 35 leaders in the community who make up the Partnership Council, and the Simcoe Muskoka Workforce Development Board has been an important partner since day one, and have consistently supported sharing information about hiring immigrant talent in Simcoe County. We work across sectors, but today we're specifically here to talk about the labor force and encouraging local employers to hire immigrant talent. We know that in 2011, our first baby boomers started to leave the workforce. And as that has increased in 2015, there were more people who turned age 65 than turned 15. And those are the ages that the federal government typically attributes to exiting the workforce or entering the workforce.
Right.
So just to maintain our labor force, we need to look at another source.
Yeah, you can clearly see a gap.
Yes, and yet we're also poised for growth in the employment sector. So we really need to look at making the most of the immigrant talent that's in Simcoe County.
How do you think we go about doing that?
I think that there's a number of different things. I think part of it is helping to educate employers. And I think it was 2010, the Digging Deeper survey that was done indicated that at that time only about 30% of employers had experience having immigrants in their workforce. So helping them to understand processes, and we actually have some actual content online at hireimmigrants.simcoe.ca.
Great.
There's about 40 pages of content to help employers when they're starting to think about hiring immigrant talent. And there's a great roadmap on there that will take an employer right through from the moment they start to think about recruiting, to selection, to onboarding, to retention.
So why might employers need this assistance?
Oftentimes, yeah, it is a great question.
Oh, thanks.
Oftentimes, even when they get a resume and they've got a name that they can't pronounce, there's a bit of hesitation perhaps about calling and asking somebody. And there's actually an app on the website that allows somebody to type in the name, and it provides the pronunciation for you.
And I can even speak to that as somebody who does as this job. You are always afraid to pronounce the name wrong. I try to go through names with people before they come on, because why is there that? It's so crazy, because if it's a long, different name, we shouldn't be afraid to give it a try, and yet we are hesitant. So I can only imagine what it would be like if you were trying to call, let's say, 10 people with names that you had no idea how to roll off the tongue. Sure, you might just skip right by them, which is just awful, because think of what you're missing.
That's correct, and there are a lot of things that immigrant talent brings. Certainly we know that in Simcoe County we have a growing immigrant demography. In 2011 we had over 50,000 individuals in Simcoe County who were born in other countries. And so if you're a local employer providing local services or local products, your consumer base is changing. And so, thinking about who your customers are and trying to mirror that back when individuals are coming into your business. And then also, if you're an employer who's looking at opening global markets, hiring immigrant talent makes a lot of sense because immigrants oftentimes have networks in other countries, and they also speak multiple languages. In Simcoe County, just from a demography perspective, in 2011 there was 107 languages that were non-official mother tongues.
Wow.
More than people realize.
That is unbelievable. 107, I can't even imagine. Yeah, absolutely. See, it just goes to show what's out there. Holy moly. I don't know what my next question is. I'm floored. Goodness. So, okay, Sandra, speak to this. Is obviously a big deal for sure. What would ever get you involved in something like this? Was it a job that came across the table, or do you have a personal attachment?
My background is employment. I've worked in the field of employment for a very long time, and you know, it just from a labor market perspective, it just makes a lot of sense. And you know, when you're looking at labor, it's always great from a business case to be getting the most of your talent. And so, for example, demographically in Simcoe County, recent immigrants were twice as likely as Canadian-born to have a university degree, and yet at the same time period, their unemployment rate was 5.5% higher. So having those individuals sit and not be employed or underemployed isn't making the most of the resources, the human resources in our communities.
And I guess the most controversial question of all that begs to be asked is, are we afraid to give away all of the jobs? How are you convincing employers not to be concerned with that there is enough to go around, that we should be contacting everybody on the list?
I think that more and more we're hearing that employers are actually struggling to find new employees. So I think the case starts to tell itself. They're starting to feel that pressure. We're hearing that from service providers as well, where they're not having the same amount of clients come in the door. But I think that if you look in other areas, because the labor market truly is supply and demand, as the supply starts to decrease, you'll start to see employers become more and more creative in their hiring solutions.
Absolutely, and that'll be great to see. Give me an example of a really good success story. I know you must have many.
Yeah, I have lots of success stories. I think one of the ones that I really loved, and it's interesting because in some ways it's a traditional story, but yeah, we have an astronaut who's here.
Wow.
A lot of people don't think about that. And he's started a space company, his own space company. So, but he immigrated, so he wasn't part of the Canadian space program, although he has been, you know, it was being an astronaut that brought him to Canada. But you know, we have other cases where I can think of an individual.
Sandra, I have to cut you off. I do apologize, but an astronaut, good job. You came to the table with a good story. My goodness, wow. Thank you for joining us. Don't you go anywhere though, because we are coming right back after this commercial.